Hi, I'm Jason Sullivan of Rathbone Group, and this is our white lining video. If you're looking for Al Pacino and Scarface, or perhaps the rapper Melly Mel, this is not your video. Rather, we're talking about motorcycles, not cocaine. I didn't know what white lining was until very recently. I happened to be in California on a trip, and I was taking an Uber from the airport to the hotel. Traffic on the highway was, as you expect and hear about in California, pretty slow and jam-packed. And suddenly I see these motorcycles going past all the cars down the white line of the highway. And I thought, man, that is incredibly dangerous. That can't be allowed. And my Uber driver could tell I was taking photos and videos, trying to get some content for this video series. And I asked, is that illegal? And I was surprised at how quickly and confidently he said, yes, it is. I said, man, I don't understand that. And he said, that is just what they allowed to let the motorcycles go through traffic and reduce congestion. He happened to ride motorcycles himself and said, although you have to be really careful when you do it, it's perfectly legal. So when I got home, I had to look more into this and understand exactly what it was. There are two different definitions we need to focus on. One, white lining, or often called lane splitting, is when a motorcycle drives between two lanes of traffic traveling in the same direction down that dotted white line. Lane filtering is slightly different in that it is passing vehicles, but at a much slower or stop speed. It allows motorcycles to move up through traffic, usually at or towards an intersection, when those vehicles are slowed or stopped. The safety and political reasons for this are that it does reduce congestion. When motorcycles are backed up behind other vehicles, there is a higher risk of a rear-end collision. And there are some industry studies that show that there are more accidents and greater injuries when motorcycles aren't allowed to either lane split or lane filter. Still, it seemed incredibly dangerous to me. But let's look at each of these rules or the application of them. So first, with white lining or lane splitting, there is only one state that allows that, and that's the state I was in, California. There is a statute that allows motorcycles to pass along the white line, and there's not much guidance after that. The California Highway Patrol has put out some information and guidelines, but these are just guidelines, not hard and fast rules, which if you do have a subrogation claim involving a motorcycle and a vehicle, and you're wondering who's at fault, it's really going to come down to a fact-specific analysis. So let's just take a couple of different examples here and look at them. Let's say we have a highway. The speed limit is 60 miles an hour. Now, traffic on this particular day or evening, let's say it's night and it's dark. Traffic is traveling at 50 miles an hour. Now we have a motorcyclist. He's riding a black motorcycle, wearing all black clothing, and they are driving right down that white dotted line in between the vehicles. They're traveling at 55 miles an hour, just a little bit faster than the traffic, still underneath the speed limit. Suddenly, as the motorcycle is traveling down that white dotted line, one of the vehicles in front of it merges over, cuts it off, and there's a collision. So who's at fault? Well, you're going to have to look at the actions of both the driver of the motorcycle and the motor vehicle. So the motorcycle is allowed to drive where they were. It's not illegal to be driving down those white dotted lines in California. The question is, did the driver of the car signal that they were going to turn? And was it prudent for that motorcyclist to be driving down in the dark with his headlight on with that traffic? Other things you might want to consider is size of the vehicles, size of the lanes, visibility. All of those things may play a factor in determining whether or not the motorcycle was reasonable in how it was traveling in between the lanes of traffic and whether or not the car was reasonable in making the lane change. Certainly, as a driver, you still have that opportunity and ability to have awareness of your surroundings and signal before you make that turn. So those are all things you want to look at. Let's take another scenario, exact same highway, but this time it's daylight. Traffic is moving a little bit slower because it's commuter rush hour, and everybody's going about 30 miles an hour, except for our motorcyclist who's traveling 60 miles an hour down the center of the lanes. Now here, we have a little different situation. The motorcyclist is traveling twice as fast as the regular rate of speed for all those other vehicles. Still under the speed limit, so we don't have negligence per se, but we do have an issue where that driver or the motorcyclist maybe should be traveling a little bit slower, Did that car driver have an opportunity to see the motorcyclist before making that turn? If the motorcyclist is traveling twice the rate of speed, that's definitely going to cut off the time that that motorist would have had the opportunity to see them. And if the motorist used a turn signal, it definitely cut down on the motorcyclist's ability to slow down and stop, given the fact that that car was going to turn in front of it. So again, there is no black and white. The car isn't at fault. The motorcyclist is at fault. It's a very fact-specific determination looking at all the factors. So if you have one of these claims, you're going to want to look at the comprehensive rules if it's in California where the motorcyclist is allowed to do that. So now let's turn to the other term, lane filtering. And this is used at much slower speeds. Either all the traffic is stopped or going at a very slow rate of speed, usually at or near an intersection. Lane filtering allows the motorcycle to move up into traffic, cut down on congestion, but it's at a lower rate of speed. And so the states that have adopted this are ones that say, look, it is a low rate of speed. It's not increasing the risk of danger or risk of injury. And so they're going to allow it. States that currently have lane filtering rules are Arizona, Colorado, Montana, Utah, and Minnesota. Now, all of these states have adopted or implemented their lane filtering statutes within the last 6 or 7 years. So there's definitely a chance that more states will begin to adopt these. But the lane filtering, just like the lane splitting, isn't just carte blanche. The motorcyclists can do whatever they want. It's limited to very specific situations. So if we take a look at the Arizona statute, it is limited to roads where it's divided into at least 2 adjacent traffic lanes in the same direction of travel. It has a speed limit that does not exceed 45 miles per hour. And the motorcyclist is not traveling at a speed that exceeds 15 miles an hour. So as we look at that, you can imagine a road with a much lower rate of speed. And as the motorcyclist is conducting or undertaking this lane filtering move, they're still not going over 15 miles an hour. Looking at another state, Colorado, their rule states that motorcyclists cannot split lanes, but they are allowed to pass a vehicle within the same lane, again, under very certain and limited circumstances. And that criteria is listed in the statute and states, the overtaken or passed vehicle must be stopped. The vehicle in the adjacent lane must also be stopped. The driver of the motorcycle is in a lane that's wide enough for them to pass the vehicle safely. The passing motorcycle isn't traveling more than 15 miles an hour, and the conditions are such that it permits prudent operation of the motorcycle. So again, we have a situation where the rate and speed that the motorcyclist is operating at is a very low speed, which should allow them time to react should a motorist make a sudden lane change without signaling. So even if they are signaling, the motorcyclist can slow down when they have the opportunity to see that. It will be very interesting to see in the coming years what other states adopt these rules, or if these states that have adopted either the lane splitting or lane filtering rules change them in any way. Interesting for me, I'm a licensed attorney in Hawaii, and in Hawaii, there was a time period from 2018 to 2020 where they allowed something called shoulder surfing. And that allowed motorcyclists in areas of congestion to actually go up into pedestrian or shoulder areas of the roadway to pass. That's no longer allowed, but again, ways for cities and states to try and deal with traffic congestion and keep everyone safe. And they allowed that short-term provision that allowed the surfing of motorcycles to go onto the shoulder. So again, anytime that you have a case involving a motorcycle, don't be like me and immediately think, well, there's no way the motorcyclist is allowed to do that. Check the states. I'm sure that there will be updated developments as this continues on and potentially more states adopt these rules. And then you're going to really want to focus on, okay, so the motorcyclist was allowed to be where they are. Now let's look at the comparative fault, if any, between the motorcyclist and the vehicle that they crashed into, or the vehicle that crashed into the motorcycle. For On Subrogation and Rathbone Group, I'm Jason Sullivan, and that's the long and short of it.